Ladies and gentlemen, we have a massive bombshell report from Project Veritas exposing CNN. Secret recordings of CNN technical director Charlie Chester show, at least in his opinion, the network did get Trump out. Their goal was to get Trump out. They are a propaganda network that sells fear. We saw this last night. The latest bombshell report, my jaw hit the floor when I saw this. This is an employee of CNN who said COVID gangbusters with ratings, right? Which is why we constantly have the death toll on the side. This is a guy who is cheering on the deaths of people during a pandemic because it makes them money. These people are depraved. And now we have the evidence. Now we need to consider it's one guy. It's not indicative of every single person who's worked at CNN because Project Veritas has also exposed other people at CNN who express regret and anger over what CNN as a company does. But this is the virus that infected news. Those, and they've been around for a long time. It's not like it's a new thing, but these are the money-hungry, ratings-driven, corrupt lunatics who want to sell fear to make money. That's this guy, Charlie Chester. Yesterday, Project Veritas released part one. This is where we heard the guy say, he's an activist. He wanted to get out Donald Trump, and they did it, and they produced propaganda. And my response was, it's really hard to comment on these things because we know this, because we're not stupid. We see what CNN does. We see how they lie. We see how their media reporters lie to make money. But what Project Veritas got us was someone from CNN speaking, their mouth moving, telling us in no uncertain terms, this is what we do. Now we know this, but having that evidence was powerful. And I say that's why it's hard to comment on, because it's like we're learning what we all knew to be true. This, the latest up, look, Project Veritas, they slow roll you on this one. That's what they do. They put out a little bit and they say like, hey, we got CNN. They let these people stew a little bit and then they drop the big hammers. I wouldn't be surprised if they got way more because, wow, this is what, day 2. And this latest report is, all I can say is when I saw this video dropped by James OKeefe, where this guy's basically cheering on death, I cannot believe they got this guy. They have his CNN employee cheering for dead people because they get ratings from it. We know. But this was above and beyond. I mean, we can talk about people who are depraved, where they're like, I want to get more ratings. We got to scare people. But to have someone straight up be like, oh, yeah, show that death toll. More dead means more ratings. It's like, wow, man. Look, I had low expectations for these people, but this is almost as far as it goes. But can I say, are we surprised at all? Let's read through this, and then we'll talk about what's going on with CNN's ratings. They're in the gutter. Apparently, their media show has the lowest ratings yet, or at least of the year. It's tumbling for them. They know they're in trouble, and this is the kind of person they bring on. I also want to point something out. As most of you know, I use NewsGuard for all of my sources. This is a startup company. They're biased, in my opinion, but I do it on purpose because I want to make sure that the news I'm getting, because I fact-check these things too, is from what the establishment approves of. Well, for the longest time, Project Veritas was deemed unreliable. They give it a red exclamation point saying, oh, no, Project Veritas is untrustworthy. I think that's a lie. I think Project Veritas shows video of a guy saying some things. I think you have to be a discerning individual because you don't want to jump to conclusions. You want to make sure you're approaching things pragmatically. But if you're going to compare, this is what I love. Project Veritas publishes a video, Charlie Chester saying straight up, COVID gangbusters with ratings, right? Which is why we constantly have the death toll on the side. A quote from the man. Now, maybe this guy is just trying to ham it up because he's trying to score with some chick he met on Tinder. Maybe he's exaggerating. I don't care. You know why? The standard in media is anonymous sources. The New York Times can go, we talked to an anonymous source who told us that Donald Trump was, kicking puppies. And you're like, who's the source? What is this? Is it a joke? What's the context? I don't know. You can't even see anything. They're just telling you, trust us. Veritas only ever shows you people on camera. And NewsGuard has the nerve to say, oh, it's untrustworthy for these reasons. Complete BS. You look at any one of these other news organizations that got everything wrong. And you tell me I can't trust a video of a guy saying a thing? That's crazy to me. Well, I got good news for y'all. Right now, Project Veritas has been upgraded to in review, which is really interesting. The website is in the process of being rated or reviewed. I think Project Veritas deserves a green check mark. Well, one of the standards for NewsGuard is whether or not you reveal what your funding sources are, so maybe that'll be an issue. But I think Project Veritas should be deemed credible because I don't see how you can have BuzzFeed or Media Matters be more credible. Media Matters makes things up. This is look. I should get into the CNN Exposed thing, but I'm pointing out how broken the whole establishment media ecosystem is. That I'm being told that Project Veritas is not trustworthy when they literally have this guy saying, if it bleeds, it leads. It's fear, like fear really drives numbers. I'm not supposed to believe a guy saying it on video. You say that's not credible. Meanwhile, Media Matters lies, makes things up. It's amazing how the system is broken, isn't it? So I do use NewsGuard because I want to get the news from the establishment sources and then show you, like, here's where the fake news is and here's where the lies are and here's my thoughts on it. Plus, to be fair, many of the sources, like NewsGuard's not bad. You know what I mean? They're biased. You got to know the bias. Check this out. Part 2, CNN director Charlie Chester reveals how network practices manipulation to change the world. There's an art to manipulation, inflection, saying things twice. It's always like leading them in a direction before they even open their mouths. Oh, man. It's like that episode of Rick and Morty where they go to the doctor to get like their personalities repaired or whatever, and then their toxic selves are the green slime people. That's what this guy is, this slime monster. Veritas reports. Project Veritas has released the second installment of a new Expose CNN series today featuring technical director Charlie Chester, who described how the network uses manipulation to shape public opinion and garner higher ratings. Quote, any reporter on CNN, what they're actually doing is they're telling the person what to say. It's always like leading them in a direction before they even open their mouths. The only people that we, CNN, will let on the air, for the most part, are people that have a proven track record of taking the bait. Wow. James OKeefe. Wow. Project Veritas. The other day I was reading that apparently they use Tinder. That's what I was saying. And so I'm talking to this guy on the IRL podcast, and we're like, wow, if James OKeefe has got these like young undercover reporters on Tinder, like swiping left until they find someone who works for these major corporations and swiping right, that is top tier stuff. I mean, this is like, they got the skills to pay the bills. This is very, very high level, like intelligence gathering stuff. I'm very impressed. I think there's an art to manipulation, inflection, saying things twice. There's little subtleties to how to manipulate people. I mean, it's enough to change the world, you know? I can already hear the media saying it's deceptive. They're deceiving people. They're tricking them into meeting somebody and asking them their opinions. Maybe the initial interaction is a deception. Maybe the guy thinks he's on a date when he's actually part of a sting operation. A lot of people do it all the time. Undercover reporting has been around forever, basically. But you mean to tell me you have a guy telling you on camera that CNN as a major network lies to people outright, and you're concerned about how they came about evidence exposing CNN for lying? If someone decides to say something, they've said it, okay? And what's really interesting here is that you can see people like this Charlie Chester guy at CNN. They say things behind closed doors that they don't truly believe. Well, like they say things publicly they don't believe. And I've often thought about this. I'm like, how do people always fall for this? And I was like, oh, because they have different opinions publicly and privately. I, for the most part, tell you exactly what I think. I have no script. I literally just turn the camera and start talking. My opinions are literally my opinions. However, it is true that there are some things I won't say publicly. These typically have to do with legal issues and security issues, not matters of truth and justice and enlightenment and information, right? Typically, if there's something I can't talk about or say, it's because I'm concerned about safety or causing certain, like minimizing harm. It's a journalistic standard. When it comes to being honest, I'll say I'm wrong. I'll try my best and I'll give you my thoughts on the matter. CNN does the opposite. James OKeefe confronted this guy, went to a restaurant, and he said, I'd like to ask you about the things you've said. And the guy says, I got nothing to say. I'm not going to talk to you. And he gets up and leaves. Why? Because behind closed doors, they will tell you the truth. Behind closed doors, they will say, we know we're a propaganda outlet. We know we lie, we cheat, and we steal. And you know what? You know what really scares me? I bet you could share this video right now with your friends, and they're going to say something like, I don't believe it. Project Veritas is fake news, blah, blah, blah. No. Project Veritas is currently under review. So they're not deemed by NewsGuard to be fake news right now. They actually got upgraded. So we'll see how that plays out. They want to say, quote, like, why isn't it high enough, today? Like, it would make our point better if it was higher. And I'm like, what am I effing rallying for? That's a problem that we're doing that. Fair point. This is what I've often referred to as firefighters wishing for fires. It's an old thing that I learned about from family members and friends, where firefighters sit around bored and they're just thinking like, man, I hope there's a fire because I want to do something. I want to do my job. I want to save people. But you realize how insane that is. No, you don't want a fire, but you want to be useful, right? You want to have purpose. They say, Chester also described how CNN has used the COVID-19 pandemic to keep viewers hooked on the screen. It's fear. Fear really drives numbers, Chester said. Fear is the thing that keeps you tuned in. He added, COVID, gangbusters with ratings, right? Which is why we CNN constantly have the COVID death toll on the side. I want you to stop and think about this. Maybe there are some people who are sitting there saying, Tim, you do the same thing with all this stuff, blah, blah. I didn't put a COVID death counter on my shows. Right now, I'm talking about things that I care to talk about. When it comes to the Timcast IRL podcast, the Timcast channel or the Tim Pool channel, I talk about what I think matters. When you Google search riot, the news they give you is about the Capitol. I'm looking at some of these other YouTubers. I'm looking at some of these progressive YouTubers, and they're talking about Donald Trump. And I'm just sitting here like, why? He's not the president. Oh, we know why. Ratings. Trump is an obsession. Me, I'm talking about the Chauvin trial and the riots in Minnesota because it's news. It's happening now. And in my opinion, if I cover a story and it doesn't get a ton of traffic, there's nothing I can do about it. I actually covered one of Project Veritas's stories a month or two ago, and it was one of it didn't get much traffic at all. Very, very low viewership. I don't care. There's nothing I can do about that. If I make a video you don't care about, what am I supposed to do? I can only trust that what I'm talking about matters to me and I have something to say about it. I have no script. If I don't care, what am I supposed to talk about? I can only talk about what I think matters. And there are a lot of people I think who appreciate that and will watch because of it. We can see the media lies and the manipulation in the Chauvin trial, how they keep putting out these stories where they're saying things like prosecution, witness says Chauvin was wrong. And they omit the redirect from the defense. They omit the things that, you had the medical examiner say that Floyd died from, a combination of factors. But the media doesn't report that. They say Chauvin was not trained to use this. Chauvin was not permitted. It's the media manipulation and lies. Take a look at this stuff. Go on YouTube. I wonder. Take a look at which YouTubers are obsessed with Donald Trump still, because they exist. I'm not going to say their names, drive traffic to them. And I see them posting these things and I'm like, why are y'all talking about Donald Trump? Ratings is all they care about. A man who is not president. I've read comments from him in relation to the vaccine yesterday, but I don't make a video where I'm like, Donald Trump did this today. Donald Trump did that today. Yeah, to the left, that's where they get their ratings. To me, I'll talk about what I want to talk about. I've had people tweeting at me saying things like, your followers aren't going to like that tweet. Okay. There's probably a lot of things my followers don't like that I say. But you know what? That shows how those of you watching and what we do, we're the real media. Because tons of people who follow me don't like me or disagree with me. Project Veritas goes on to say, Chester said Jeff Zucker, the network's president, would call the CNN newsroom during live TV segments and order the staff to keep COVID death tolls on the screen to capture viewers' attention. Chester admitted, quote, the special red phone rings and this producer picks it up. You hear murmurs. And every so often they put it on speaker and it's the head of the network being like, there's nothing that you're doing right now that makes me want to stick. Put the COVID death toll numbers back up because that's the most enticing thing that we had. So put it back up. Amazing. Chester went on to explain how his network manipulates the public in attempts to hide their tactics in order to be successful in achieving personal political agendas. Quote, no one ever says those things out loud, but it's obvious based on the amount of stories that we, CNN, do. The fact that we have a segment called The Good Stuff, which is a feel-good thing, but it's a dedicated moment at the end to almost be the ice cream to alleviate everything that you've been through. Something sweet to end it with because everything else is doom and gloom, he said. My jaw dropped when I saw this video. It's that quote, that quote about taking the bait. That first quote they report here, where I just could not believe they got him to say it. When he said, It's always like leading them in a direction before they even open their mouths. The only people that CNN will let on the air, for the most part, are people that have a proven track record of taking the bait. It's incredible. I was recently on Fox News. I was on Brian Kilmeade's show, and they asked me a few questions beforehand, and I made some points that were contrary to what they expected. The interesting thing about it was the response was, wow, we didn't even think about that. Cool. I was asked if I thought they would try and ban Donald Trump's new social network, and I said no, because they're ratings driven. But the conversation was about how big tech was censoring all conservatives and trying to be unfair. Now, I don't think me saying that necessarily harms their narrative, but it wasn't what they expected. The response I got from Fox News was like, wow, that's interesting. Cool. And then they asked me about it on TV in a segment that was basically supposed to be big tech is going to silence conservatives. And, if Donald Trump even tries to come up with a new platform, they will collude. The segment was Parler. Was there collusion to get them shut down? Seems like there was. Was there justification? Seems like there wasn't. They lied. And then the question was, if Donald Trump starts a new network, do you think they'll take it down? And they were expecting me to say, of course, Donald Trump won't be allowed to speak. They're biased. They hate conservatives. And I said, no, they need him. They need an excuse to allow him to speak. And they were like, interesting. It's not exactly what they expected. When I went to the social media summit where Trump was speaking, this was a couple years ago, I straight up said, too many conservatives are ignoring the fact that progressive and anti-war leftists are getting suspended as well. And if you use that, you can show it's not just a conservative problem, though it does predominantly affect conservatives. My whole pitch to coming to the media summit was you need to pay attention to the anti-war left that are getting banned as well. Many of these activists who are getting banned as well, because it seems like what the establishment is doing is trying to get rid of anybody who opposes them. Conservatives being the biggest threat to the established order. There you go. What we saw yesterday was just absolutely shocking. What we see today is even more shocking. My respect to Project Veritas, because this is massive. Some are arguing that his statements could open the door to an actual malice argument in a defamation suit, meaning when CNN now smears someone, you could theoretically tell a judge, look, this is what their staff believes. We don't know there's actual malice, but we want to get past a motion to dismiss for discovery to see if this sentiment about being activists and trying to harm other people is prevalent among the staff who defamed us. To put it simply, if someone at CNN says, Tim Pool does X and it's not true, if I tried to sue them, they could argue, well, you need an actual malice standard, meaning there was reckless disregard for what was true or they knew it was false. It's hard to prove that, and typically the judges will just dismiss it saying it's public opinion, you can't, sorry. But now you have a guy on the record saying CNN lies. We drive numbers. It's all about fear and propaganda. I'd argue, listen to what the staff members say. It's possible this is a common occurrence in CNN. Judge may still disagree, but some people are arguing it could open the door to discovery. Project Veritas has announced they're going to be suing CNN. I think Ana Cabrera. And they're already in a lawsuit with the New York Times, and they got past their motion to dismiss. It's powerful stuff. They're doing amazing work, and my respect to them. CNN, on the other hand, is in trouble. Fox News reporting CNN's Brian Stelter delivers widely mocked rant on vaccine selfies to smallest audience of the year. This shows you the pathetic helplessness of CNN and Brian Stelter's show. Brian Stelter was pointing out that Fox News hosts weren't taking vaccine selfies. So what? That's all you've got? That's your show? Brian Stelter made his bread and butter ragging on right-wing media in the Trump era. But now that Trump isn't president anymore, right-wing media was never particularly prevalent in mainstream culture. It's a problem for conservatives. Mainstream news is left-leaning. So who cares to watch this trash show now? Why would I watch Brian Stelter rant about Tucker Carlson? That's the stupidest thing ever. I suppose when there was fear that the right-wing media ecosystem was propping up Trump, people wanted to hear about it. Now what? Look, Brian Stelter's ratings are way up from where he was a few years ago, but they're way down from their peak. And I got to be honest, it could just be everyone else's ratings are down as well. Our ratings went down a little bit after the election because everyone got bored and they're tired of it. So that could be it. Maybe Brian Stelter will get his ratings back a little bit. And I don't know. I will tell you this. His lowest ratings yet. Well, as of this month, ratings have been improving. March, mid-February to mid-March was where the ratings dropped. And I think it was because people were burnt out on politics. For me, my channels, things starting to be going back up and improving. And this is true for many other channels that I know of. Brian Stelter is now going down. I think the reality is CNN's in trouble and they know it. Layoffs are going to come. Salaries are going to get slashed. And then, it's obvious. What we're seeing with CNN, I will tell you this. I am excited Veritas was able to expose this, but I will also tell you, as they begin grasping at straws, which, as you know, is the analogy for you're drowning, you're sinking in water, and you're trying to grab anything to stay afloat, so you're grabbing straw, which will not help you. Well, what happens after they grasp for the straw and it doesn't help them? Then they start thrashing violently about as they drown. CNN is going to get 10, 50, 100 times worse as they become desperate for ratings. The lies, the smears, the manipulation will only get worse. Or Jeff Zucker jumps ship, and he might. Then the ratings just collapse and it becomes a shell of its former self. And so be it. We know what they're all about. They're liars. And if we didn't have outlets like Project Veritas, we wouldn't know this, because the establishment machine will not criticize itself. The rival news companies will not criticize CNN. And I know why, because I've worked for them. I worked for ABC News, Univision. They said, don't report on what these other companies do because we do the same. And that's it. So long as they're all criminals trying to siphon money from people, that's what you'll get. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 4 p.m. over at youtube.com/Timcast. Thanks for hanging out, and I will see you all then.